Hi, welcome back to my channel and my review for Speak No Evil. This is the brand new horror thriller film from Blumhouse starring James McAvoy. And for those who don't know, this is actually a remake, or rather an American version, of the Danish horror film of the same name, Speak No Evil, that came out just a couple of years ago now. And they did basically what they did with Quarantine and Wreck back in the 2000s. You know, you've got this European horror film that does really well, and they decided to make an English language version for an American market. And that's basically what they've done again here. And I was slightly apprehensive actually about going to see this movie because I have seen the original. And whilst I did like that film, I won't say enjoy, it's not really a film you could say you enjoy. I definitely liked it, but it is unbelievably grim and harsh. And, you know, for those who have seen it will know what I'm talking about, but the ending is probably one of the most shocking endings I think I've ever seen in a movie. And I really wasn't in any rush to go back and go through that experience again. So I wasn't 100% sure about seeing this, but this movie actually does go in some different directions that I wasn't expecting. So I think even if you have seen the original, there's enough different in this movie, I think, to warrant going out and still giving this one a watch, because I do think it does a really nice job. It's a good film, and it does do a few things differently, which I quite liked. But anyway, getting into this review, I'll try and keep the details as vague as possible, just because I don't want to give away any spoilers or anything. Of course, if you've seen the trailer already, the one that gave away just far too much, you know. To some extent, obviously, you know where a movie like this is going, but even still, they were showing scenes from all throughout the third act as well, which I wasn't too happy about. So really, don't watch the trailer if you haven't seen it yet. But getting into the story here, this is about this couple, Louise and Ben, who are away on a holiday in Italy with all these other families that are there in this one place and kind of doing activities together, all that sort of stuff. And they end up hitting it off really well with another couple that are on holiday there. They end up spending the rest of the week with this family. And once they get back home to London, they receive an invitation from this couple to go and spend a week with them out in their kind of farmland and country estate that they own. And of course, they accept this invitation, they go out there, and what starts out as this really nice week gets more and more uncomfortable until everything starts turning extremely sinister. So that's your setup for this film. And I really, really liked it. It's definitely a slow burn story. It's one of those films that it's all about the atmosphere and the build up to one of those very explosive final acts. And I think the reason it works so well is it really does pull you into this situation because of how good the chemistry is between these two couples at the start. Like, I do think you really buy into the fact that these people get on, they're quite excited by each other, and they would actually have a good reason to decide to go out and take a chance spending some more time with these people. You know, you've got very charming actors in these roles. Of course, people like James McAvoy, which I'll get into later, but something about the whole atmosphere and vibe between them works really well, and you totally understand why they'd want to go and spend a week with this couple. And I liked the fact that once they get there, everything does seem quite normal, and there's only just a very few details that show you that something isn't quite right. You know, the whole thing with the condition of the young boy who doesn't have a tongue, weird stuff like that are put in there, which could be something completely innocent, but there's just something a little bit off about it, and those little things are sprinkled throughout. And slowly revealed to you as the story goes on. So it's a very tense movie, even though in each scene there isn't actually that much going on. But it's definitely still really interesting and really engaging. All of the dialogue and the scenes between these characters are great. And you know, the original obviously was a bit of a commentary on this kind of thing of being walked over when you're in awkward situations, people not being able to stand up for themselves, and was kind of a very extreme version of this, and you get to see that again here. And I think it will be relatable for a lot of people. You know, if you've ever been on holiday with some people or out for dinner or something where there's really awkward subjects brought up or controversial subjects and or maybe people have slightly weird quirks, something like that, and that just makes the whole situation awkward where you don't really know how to navigate that situation. And this movie is filled with tons of stuff like that. It's all about making the audience feel as uncomfortable as possible, which he does a great job of doing. I loved it for that. There's a particular scene out at a seafood restaurant which really encompasses that, and yeah, it's painful to watch. Some of you will have to watch through your fingers through that scene, I think. But it really does work. The whole setup of the story, there's something a bit scary, a bit unsettling about it. But it's a very engaging film, even when there isn't actually that much actually happening on screen. You've got to talk about the acting here, because James McAvoy is just unbelievable in this role. You know, if you've ever seen James McAvoy get completely off the rails in films like Filth, the Scottish film that came out here about 10 years ago, I think that was the first thing I saw him in. And he is just amazing to watch. He's so entertaining, and he can just play a little bit of everything. You know, he's very, very charming, so you totally understand why these characters gravitate towards him. They're really kind of charmed by him, but he's also very intimidating, and he can switch just like that. And he's a very, very convincing actor to play a role like this. And I actually think the performance from him really brings a more interesting dynamic to this than I think the actor that played the same character in the original. And that's something I'd say about all the acting performances here. They are a little bit better in this film, so I think in a lot of ways, it does help you buy into the situation a little bit more, especially when you have to start questioning certain decisions that these characters make throughout, where you're thinking to yourself, I'm not sure I would be staying in this situation now. I think it's time to go. And they don't. And I think the actors here, because of the kind of chemistry between them, they do a good job at kind of convincing us, for the most part, of why they end up staying around even when all of this weird stuff is starting to happen. Now, the final act here is really where most of the differences are. Again, I won't go into any spoilers at all, but this is where the film really kind of changes the pace and the direction to where the original went. And in a lot of ways, I like it, because I do think it's a more satisfying ending and it is more rewatchable for what it's worth. But I don't think it packs the same punch that the original does. To me, this kind of feels like the sort of ending you'd expect from a fairly generic, sort of psycho home invasion thriller. It kind of plays out the way you would expect, I think, whereas the original really kind of shocked and surprised me. And I will remember that ending probably forever, and I don't think that's the case with this film. But in another sense, I would be happy just to go back and rewatch this one again. So it's a bit of a pro and a con there. But I still did like the way it played out. I think maybe it does go on for a little bit too long. It's kind of very drawn out, the final act. I think it would have been a bit more intense if it kind of... when it starts to really, when you get to a certain point when you realise something is very wrong and it all kicks off, there's still quite a lot of the movie left to go, and I think the final act could have done with a little bit more tightening up. It wasn't quite as intense for me, I don't think, as that original, but maybe that's just because I knew what was coming, I'm not sure, but it still works fairly well. It's still a nice ending. It's still a good ending, I think, and it works for the film. So I definitely think if you haven't seen this film yet, you should definitely go and see it. As I say, if you have seen the original, you should go and check this out as well. It's definitely worth your time to watch. I may end up actually doing a spoiler review for this one as well, because there's a few extra things that will be quite interesting to talk about as well with this one. So definitely a good movie, and I would probably say one step down for me from the original, just because I don't think it will have the staying power of that movie, but very much still a good movie in its own right. So I'm going to give this one a 3.5 out of 5 rating. Please let me know all your thoughts down in the comments section if you have seen this movie. Take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.